And welcome for joining me today. It's Rosa B. Normally this is a Meet the Employer session, but this is actually going to be Meet the Entrepreneur and Businessman session today. So first of all, I want to welcome you all for joining us. Before we get started, I just wanted to welcome a few other people. I wanted to welcome Tammy, Mohammed and Raleigh, who are all our fabulous tech people that are in the background making this happen today. So welcome, thank you for joining us and really appreciate your support. I also wanted to introduce you to the fabulous Patricia. Patricia is our captions lady. So Patricia, thanks for joining us today. But I do have to make an apology as our BSL lady is unable to join us today. But as you know, we do record this session and it does go on to our fabulous Hive, which is our 24/7 website, because we want to make sure it's accessible for everyone. So rest assured that we will have that available for the recording. Okay. So what I just wanted to say too is that we will have our chat box open. Our chat box is there for everyone to engage, have conversations, even share your own stories, your own experience, maybe your own insights and your own tips. If you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box, but we will also have a formal Q&A box at the very end of the session. And I know quite a few of you have got some interesting questions that you want to ask our guest. So without further ado, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to the fabulous Hardeep Rai. Hardeep has worn many hats in the past. He's had a successful career in investment management, private equity, and venture capitalism, and he's an entrepreneur. He has recently set up the Kaleidoscope group, of which he is founder and CEO, and I know he's going to be telling us a little bit more about that later. So without further ado, I do want to welcome Hardeep. Hardeep, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rose. I'm delighted to be here this morning.
Fantastic. Now, I know that you have many stories to share and tell us about your background in terms of your entrepreneurialism and setting up a business. So we'd love to hear some of those backstories. So I'm going to let you just take us on a journey and tell us a little bit more about what you do and your stories of entrepreneurialism.
Okay, that's great, Rosa. Thank you for that. So whenever I do talks like this, I always try and bring out different aspects of my background because some people have heard the story before. So today I'm going to start sort of just after my university days. So I studied law and economics at university, and I actually didn't do anything to do with law. I went into banking and finance. And I think the first time I ever realized I had an entrepreneurial streak in me was actually during an interview process. I knew that I was going to be asked about a particular product in the financial services industry that frankly I had no experience about whatsoever. But I went to the company that actually was selling that product and I got them to give me a training course, right? So when I had my interview, I was able to talk very competently about that product that actually I'd never used before. And that was the first time I ever realized that, hang on a minute, you know, I don't just want a job, I want to do something different. So I think entrepreneurialism for me started in my early 20s. And then I had a business idea and I found a business partner. And that was, you know, when I realized that, and this is a company called Gadget Guard, and I realized, I think I was probably 23, 24 years old at that point, Rosa, that I wanted to have a business on the side and I wanted to have a career. But my financial services career took off really well, and it was difficult for me to do anything else, to be honest, up until Ishan was born. And Ishan was born when I was 36 years old. He was born at a time when my career was going really well in the city. And, you know, in the city in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, before the financial crash, that was the heyday. Right, that was when people were making a lot of money, spending a lot of money, and being a fund manager was very sort of cool. It was a thing to do. Now, I should stress I wasn't a fund manager, Rosa, but I still did relatively well in my city days. And then when Ishan was born, everything changed. everything changed within seconds. And I think, you know, this is the thing with disability, is that it can impact us at any time, at any moment, when we least expect it to. You know, 1 minute I'm in a hospital, I'm going to be told that you're going to hear a beautiful cry in a minute from that room, and the next thing I see is an image of a person taking sort of what looked like a totally limp baby, rushing them into an emergency room. And that's all I saw. I didn't hear any sort of cries or anything. And the first thing in my mind I thought, Rosa, was, it's okay. I've got a bank balance. I've got money in the account. Whatever the problem is, I'll get the best medical, you know, physicians on him, and so on and so forth. You know, hours later, when we realized what had happened, and what had happened was, during the birthing process, there'd been a last minute complication, and that resulted in 17 minutes of oxygen not being delivered to Ishan's brain. And so that created what they called a global brain injury. And a few hours later, when I was told, your child will have, you know, if your child survives for the next few days, he's going to be severely disabled because he has a global brain injury. You know, that really changed my life instantly, Rosa. You know, and that was the beginning of the end of the Hardeep that once existed, and the birth of a new Hardeep. And on the line of disability, continuing, a lot of people don't know this because I don't sort of talk that openly about it, but I went through my own mental health challenges during the first few years of Ishan's birth. You know, whether that was suicidal thoughts, panic attacks, anxiety, depression, you name it, you know, PTSD, there's a whole load of different things that came about when Ishan was born. But I think the good thing, as you know, is that, you know, basically we tried to look at the positives of what had happened to Ishan over a period of time. And after about 5 years, I started to get back on track and think about what I wanted to do with my career. Now, in 2011, I got very lucky. I managed to work with an ex-dragon called James Khan. And one day I'm going to write a book, Rosa, on how I got my job with James. It was truly amazing, truly amazing. But here's a tip for people, is that when you're in the middle of an interview process, what I did with James is, after my first meeting with him, and I had my second interview with him, I prepared a little booklet on myself, okay? And on the front page, I put, you know, proposal from Hardeep Rai for client director role. Page 1, what's the role, job description. Page 2, why am I good for that role? Page 3, what questions do I have for you, James? And page 4, if you give me this job, what am I going to do in the first 1 month, right? And I went to bind it, Rosa, at the most expensive printers I could. And when I met him on Tuesday morning, I gave him that booklet. And he said to me, he actually said, so Hardy, have you been thinking about this job? And I said, so much so, James, I produced this for you. And I gave it to him. And do you know what, Rosa? He just smiled. He just smiled. You know, the way his glasses sort of tend to sit down his nose. And he wasn't even reading everything. It was just the effort that had been made to be different, right? And in the evening, on the same day, I got the job. And that's where my entrepreneurial journey, I would say, really started, because James gave me an opportunity that I wasn't qualified for, but he was happy to mentor me in. And, you know, I had nearly 2 years of working closely with him and his senior team to really build a business. That's where I learned about really how to start a company, you know. And we were talking earlier about failure, right? When I left James, I set up my own sort of mini Dragon's Den, if you like. And I failed, you know, and I failed on some really basic principles of choosing the wrong partners within the business, or who I thought was right at the time, but ultimately realized wasn't. And also getting the shareholdings wrong. And I think we'll talk about this later in the session, but when you are setting up a business and you have got partners, it is absolutely critical to get the right shareholding structure in place from the very beginning, because if you don't do that, then you're actually going to cause problems further down the line. So that was a failure, but actually it was a failure based on us losing our own money, not anybody else's money. And what came out of that company was actually Kaleidoscope Investments. And I have good old Shane Bratby to thank for Kaleidoscope Investments, because he actually approached me as a disabled entrepreneur for money, Rosa. And he was the one that actually told me that so many people that are disabled find it difficult to raise investment. It's either competition or apply for this grant or here's a charitable donation, but it's very rare that it's investment, right? So when he said that, I thought, hang on, I've got all this experience in investment and entrepreneurship and, you know, starting companies. Why don't I bring that into the disability world? And I knew because of Ishin, that's something I always wanted to do, Rosa. You know, I just didn't quite know what. And as soon as that happened, we managed to get NatWest on board. You know, another thing when you're building a business is to try and find somebody that can endorse it, that has got a reputation. And NatWest, who I'm grateful to today, just gave us meeting rooms, Rosa. That's all they did. I told them what Kaleidoscope do. Could we have some meeting space? And they gave us meeting space. And that was actually how we began to build our business, right? We were able to say we use NatWest offices. People were able to come. They were always very impressive offices. And we started running sessions for disabled entrepreneurs. So that was the birth of Kaleidoscope Investments. And then the Kaleidoscope Group now sort of morphed into the Kaleidoscope Group, which really helps with recruitment as well. So from a person with a disabilities point of view, can either help them to become entrepreneurs or help them to find employment. So that was sort of in a nutshell, Rosa, my journey into how I got to Kaleidoscope Group today.
Hardeep, thank you. Wow, there's so much in there to unpack, isn't there? You know, one of the questions I had was, what was your key driving force to become an entrepreneur? And it's really interesting because you talked about the Hardeep before and the after your son Ishin's birth. I just want to know, how much of a motivator was he for you to propel you forward in setting up the Kaleidoscope Group? I'd love to hear more about that.
That's an amazing question. So let's talk about the Hardeep before Ishin, right? Whenever, in general, this is a general comment, Rosa, when people don't attain the amount of wealth that they want to attain, they often think that money is the answer to everything, okay? But when you have money and you have your Porsche and you have a nice house and you have holidays and you have all the kind of, you know, you're kind of thinking of what should I buy next? You then suddenly realize that actually money can't buy health, right? And the day that I realized that lesson was the day that money became unimportant to me. Now, I'm not saying that I still wouldn't like nice things in my life anymore, Rosa, but when you realize that money can't buy everything, and trust me, it can't buy everything, right? Then you have to dig deeper and find out what your motivations are for starting a business. And do you know, sometimes when we run our training programs for entrepreneurs, I spend a whole session on motivation and drive, because being an entrepreneur is not easy. It is challenging. It is a difficult journey. It has significant rewards at the end, but you have to know why you're doing it. And guess what? Money is not a good enough reason, because you will hit a barrier one day where you'll realize, you'll think, forget about the money. It's not important, right? And then you have to dig deep and think, what else is it? And you hit the nail on the head for me, Rosa, in that Ishin is my driving force, right? He was the reason that I wanted to do something with disability, but it still took me a long time to get to Kaleidoscope. You know, it wasn't until he was 7 years old that I decided I want to do this. So I was learning and I was thinking and I was dealing with my own mental health before I got to that point. The other driver for me is I became quite religious after Ishin was born. I've been quite lost in my previous past from a religion point of view, but I became a Christian about 7 years ago. And that helped me to come to terms, Rosa, with Ishin and with Ishin's condition. So I now feel that I'm building Kaleidoscope as a very purpose-led organization, right? My son is at heart. You know, the good Lord is leading me as well. I feel that's very important to feel you're doing something with purpose. And I feel now my priorities are sort of purpose first, people second, and profit third, in that order: purpose, people, profit. Unfortunately, too many people put profit at the top and then people and then purpose at the bottom. So I think it's very important. So I would say Ishin definitely, Rosa, is my number one. But I feel very mission-led by what I'm doing. And I know money will come one day. we're far away from making money at the moment, but we've made massive impact in many people's lives, and that's what I'm focusing on at this point. So that's what motivates me.
Fantastic, and thank you, Hardeep. And I think this sort of leads into our next question very nicely, is the why do you want to start your own business? What's the motivator and what's the driver? Because you had mentioned earlier, it has many rewards and benefits, but it's hard work. You're responsible for running your business, for the money coming in, etc. Do you want to talk to us a little bit more about the reasons with regards to setting up a business? I know for you, it's purpose driven.
Sure. I think the first thing you have to really think about when you are starting a business is, what is your reason for doing it? Okay, the why. And a lot of people that actually think about ideas, create those ideas because of something that's happened to them that's quite negative, Rosa, right? So they haven't got a wheelchair cup holder. They haven't got an umbrella that will go behind their wheelchair. They haven't got something decorative for their crutch. It's something that doesn't work for you. That's what gives you that idea, right? Having an idea is great, but actually what's going to make you execute on that idea is actually something that you've really got to ask yourself. And I think from a motivation point of view, money will play a part, but it won't be the only thing. There will be reasons like, especially if the audience is disabled, right, is that a lot of people with disabilities are often written off. Okay, they're not given the fair opportunities, they're not given the fair chances. So they often feel that they have a point to prove. They want to show other people that, just because you don't believe in me, I'm going to do something to prove you wrong. Now, whilst I would say, Rosa, that is an important reason, that should not also be the key driving force, right? A lot of people with disabilities that we speak to want to be independent. They don't want to be on benefits. They don't want to be relying on housing benefit or any other benefit. They want to be able to employ their own carers rather than doing it through different agencies. Those are all very genuinely good reasons, right? But actually, I think that when you go back to the core of it, you have to be ready for a journey that is going to be unstable, okay, and that is going to result in fluctuations in income on a monthly basis. That's going to result in you being pushed completely out of your comfort zone, completely. And I think this is the biggest thing. If I had to think of my biggest challenge, Rose, the biggest thing was that, having been in the city, earning a nice salary, suddenly realizing how I'm going to be paying my mortgage, right, is like a whole different shift in the mindset. So be clear on your motivations, be very clear on your support network, right? Mm-hmm. If you are going to set up a business, you need to be surrounded by people that are going to support you, right? And this is not just financially, it's people that will support you with the different things that you need in your life, whether that's care, whether that's cooking, whatever that might be, whatever your support needs are, you've got to make sure you've got the right foundation and the surrounding support network. So that's critical. And then of course the idea is really important, right? Once you have the idea of something that you want to set up, then it's all about researching that idea until you flogged it to death, literally, because you've got to really do your market research. And I know I won't go into that too much because that's the next section, but around the motivation and the drive, it's very important to think about the things I mentioned. And I do think purpose is important, Rosa. Right, we've all come out of COVID, and some of us still in COVID. We've all become disabled over the last year and a half in different ways. We've all lost people that we love. Okay, we don't know how life is going to be post vaccinations. So don't just work for the sake of working, or don't just try and start something for the sake of wanting to start something. Really align it to your purpose and what it is you want to do in your life. And when you create a business from that, then you will become much more authentic in the way that you speak about it.
This is excellent because it reminds me of the work we do in our careers coaching, aligning your work or your purpose, whether it's working for someone else or being self-employed, to your values. What's your values? What's important to you? And I can see very clearly it comes through with yourself, Hardeep. You're very, very values driven. And, you know, we can see that obviously in how you've set up Kaleidoscope. I just want to go to the chat just to give you a sense of sort of what's coming through. One lovely lady here has said, biggest challenge for me is lack of confidence in my abilities. That's what holds me back. What would you say to that?
That's a brilliant, brilliant question. I think the thing that you have to do is you have to keep going. You have to keep going, right? The easiest thing to do when you lack confidence as an entrepreneur is give up, right? And by the way, we've all been there, including me, right? But what I did when I lacked confidence is I built a support network of people that were around me, even one or two people, right? Just get one or two people to validate your idea, to help to support you, to come up with different ways to approach people. So when I thought about NatWest, or when I actually ended up getting NatWest behind me, it was because they'd let me down on something, ironically. But then we twisted that negative into a positive, and I said, would you support Kaleidoscope? And for me, NatWest coming on board was the one thing that turned my confidence from negative to positive, right? So what I would think about the lady that asked the question is, I would think about, given your business idea and what it is, right? Try and find somebody that can endorse that idea that may be external to you, because otherwise you're just another entrepreneur with an idea. What's so different about it? And me just having NatWest was a huge thing. And by the way, nowadays with social media, you can reach out to anybody. You can get in touch with anybody. So I would say align yourself to somebody that could endorse your idea, but from your own self point of view, think about what it is that's giving you that lack of confidence, okay? And try and plug that hole with knowledge. When I think about me and what gave me the lack of confidence, it was not having the knowledge, okay? So nowadays, there's so many resources online. It's phenomenal what you can learn just by watching videos from people. Find out what it is that you may be uncomfortable with. Try and plug that gap with knowledge and try and find a supporter that's external. That would be my advice on that one, Rosa.
And, you know, when we started off having our conversation and I asked you to share your backstory, you talked about James Caan. You talked about the fact that he saw something in you and he became your mentor. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of seeking and finding a mentor?
Yeah. Critical, absolutely critical. If I think about Kaleidoscope investments and a success that we have had so far, it is purely linked to our mentors, Rosa. It really is, because, and this is what I differentiate the difference between entrepreneurship in the non-disabled world and the entrepreneurship in the disabled world. Entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, right? There's no difference. It's all about how you support those disabled people through their journey. And, you know, I was one of the mentors for startup loans. So in the days of David Cameron and James Caan, when they set up startup loans, I was one of the mentors. So I was properly trained in those days too. But actually that some of the training that mentors get, Rosa, is it's not disability focused. When you're dealing with people that are entrepreneurs that may have mental health challenges, they may wake up one day and they don't even want to do their business. And the next day it's the best thing in the world, right? And that's not their fault. It's because they may have bipolar or schizophrenia, but their ideas are rocket science and they're geniuses, right? So it's actually helping mentors to understand the personalities that are involved when you're dealing with disabilities. And actually having met over 1,200 disabled entrepreneurs across 65 different disabilities, Rosa, there are patterns, right? So I think having mentors is critical, but these mentors have to be, number one, people that have been in business, okay? There's a lot of very good meaning people that are in corporate world that want to give something back. Giving something back is not the same thing as being a proper mentor to a disabled entrepreneur. It is different, right? You want someone that's had a story of success, that's had a story of failure, that has been absolutely at the coalface, that has raised money, that has lost money, that really understands disability as well. And that's where I'm proud to say something that we've developed is a program for mentors to actually really become knowledgeable about how to work with disabled entrepreneurs. So I think mentorship is critical. There's a lot of very good advice from mentors online as well about how to grow businesses, right? So definitely think about getting a mentor and aligning yourself to one. I think it's critical, Rosa.
Thank you. I want to go into our next question, which is, what are the key things our would-be entrepreneurs need to be aware of as they transition from the world of work, i.e. working for somebody else, to working for themselves?
Okay, so the first thing is financial instability. That's the obvious thing, right? You know, when you're working in a job, you know what you're going to get at the end of the month. Now, if you plan, and this is like learnings now, if you plan to be an entrepreneur in the right way, then actually you should have 12 months of savings in your account that would enable you to continue to exist, right? In an ideal world, you should also have a part-time job whilst you're building your business on the side so that some money can come in. Because the biggest issue you're going to have, first and foremost, is financial when it comes to starting a business. It's very rare that you're going to raise money from day one. You're going to have a proof of concept. You're going to have to invest in that proof of concept. So that's critically important. Number one, the funding arena. The second thing that's really important is your mental health, the amount of time that you're able to spend with your family and loved ones, and your stress levels, right? Because you are going to have to put in days and nights and weekends in building up this business, right? I don't know any entrepreneur that hasn't done that, to be honest. You know, you really have to put in the time. So again, thinking about it from a disability point of view, you need to know what your limitations are, right? You need to know what you can't do and how you can operate, right? So that enables you to give the right amount of time to the business. So that's really important, right? And then I think the third and probably the most important thing, Rosa, is when you do set something up, you have to be able to articulate what you're doing really clearly so you feel confident, to the point about the lady earlier, when you're talking to other people. Because, you know, when you start saying to others that, oh, I've started my own business, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, sadly, we live in a world of perception and how people perceive things. So the better you are at articulating what you are trying to do, the more confident you will feel and the more positive you will feel. So I would say the financial side is the first point. The time side is the second point. And the third point is making sure that you still feel good within yourself about what you're doing, so you come across and project confidence.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm interested in seeing what else is coming through in the chat box, so I'm going to encourage everyone. Hardeep has already given us so many fabulous tips and insights and pearls of wisdom, right? Please feel free to share your stories. If you want to ask some questions right now, please do, because I'm happy to ask Hardeep as we go along. Okay, Hardeep, here's the next thing. Okay, so imagine for a moment, I'm thinking of setting up my business. I have lots of ideas, but I also have lots of overwhelm. Where the heck do I begin? Where do I start? What would you say?
So the first thing I would do is you've got to really, really think about your idea, Rosa, very, very deeply. Okay, what is your idea? What is it that you want to do? And critically, what is so different about what you want to do? Okay, that compares to what is already going on in the marketplace. And I often give this example, right? You know, you can walk down a high street and you'll see a Pret, and you'll see an Eat, and you'll see a Joe the Juice, and you see a Costa, and you see a Starbucks. They're all selling sandwiches, right? They're all selling coffees. They're all competing with each other. They're all in the same place. And yet they're all doing really well, right? Why? Why? Now, I know myself, I prefer to go to Pret because they have a certain sandwich that I can't get in the other ones. I know I prefer the taste of the coffee in Costa over Starbucks. So I've got my particular favorites, right? So you have to think, when it comes to your idea, what's so special about your idea that makes it different from other people? And I do think it's important to be different. And I do think it's important to use your disability as part of your story. Now, just as, you know, in careers, a lot of people with disabilities, they may be reluctant to talk about their disability to a would-be employer. my advice, especially first of all, is I would say never be reluctant to talk about disability. And the second thing is in the entrepreneurial world, especially in the current climate that we're living in with DNI and We the 15 and all these initiatives, being disabled and being an entrepreneur is a benefit. There is actually something that is good about having a story. Look at my story that's linked to what I'm doing. So think about your disability and bring that into your story and your idea, right? You know, that's the first thing, right? The second thing is obviously look at your competitors, right? You have to look at your competitors. You have to see how you're different to your competitors and what your unique selling points are. And then thirdly, you have to think about how are you going to build and create and take that idea to market, right? If it's a product, who's going to manufacture it for you? Who's going to build it? How is it going to scale? You know, investors always love great ideas, but it's all about the route to market. It's all about scalability, because if you don't get that piece right, then it doesn't matter what your idea is, it's never going to grow. Right. So, and I know this from being an investor and talking to investors all the time. That's the question. Great idea, great execution. Okay, you have a warehouse or a manufacturer, or how's it going to get to the marketplace? So that's really important. And then I would also read up on other people's entrepreneurial journeys, Rosa, right? There's so many people that are out there now that are doing short video blogs on YouTube about their journeys and what they had to go through. Listen. If you enjoy reading, read audiobooks, or sorry, listen to audiobooks, or read biographies of people that you admire, that you feel have been successful. Now, funnily enough, I say that as a hypocrite, Rosa, because I've never done that myself, right? But I have listened to videos and I've watched motivational speeches and I've heard about what people have done. You know, we always talk as entrepreneurs about being super busy and not having enough time for anything. But actually, if you really listen to those people that have been the most successful, they have very stringent cutoff times as to when they're going to work and when they're not going to work. And their meetings are not 1 hour. They might be 20 minutes, right? With 10 minutes at the end to have a summary. So there's some really good tips that you can get from people. But I think the idea and the scalability are the two most important things that any entrepreneur that is thinking about business needs to think about. You know, and if you're doing something that's cooking related and you have a great kitchen and you're making amazing jam, that's fantastic. But one day you're going to have to trust a manufacturer with your recipe to be able to build that to scale. So, you know, think about how you're going to get it to market when you think about your idea first.
This is interesting because I'm thinking of my next question, and it is, how does one ensure there is a market for their product or service? This is all about testing your product or your service out in the marketplace. Can you give us some tips around that, or where you would start on that area?
Sure. So the first thing you have to think about is, who are your target audience, right? It's really important to do that. The number of entrepreneurs, Rosa, I've spoken to that say my target audience is everybody, right? Your target audience is not everybody. You have to really narrow down who you want as your target audience. And my own marketing director, Michael Green, often says that you should have 3 personalities of types of individual that could buy your product, right? You know, so let's imagine you had one as a younger lady, one as a younger guy, and one as a young mum or something. You have 3 profiles, right? So identifying target audience, number 1. Number 2, creating focus groups, right? Reaching out to those people, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, just saying, look, I've got a great idea, I've got a great product, I'm looking for some people that are part of a focus group. You give them a small voucher as a thank you, right? You know, focus groups are absolutely critical because they tell you and they tell investors about what other people think about your products, you know, and it's critical to talk about whether it's something they're tasting, the price of something, the marketing, the look and feel, you know, competitor knowledge, because you might think you've researched the market, but when you speak to other people in a focus group, then you'll realize what real research is, because they might be using smaller companies that you're not even aware of. Right. So focus groups are critically important around market testing. And then also, Rosa, I think it is really clever to try and find somebody that will sponsor you or endorse you or come onto your advisory board that is linked to what you're doing. So one of the other individuals on our team is John Stapleton, who's an amazing guy. He's always worked in the food industry. For them and their fund, they've got Warburton's behind them, right? The food company. It's linked to what they're doing with food and baking, right? So if you're doing something that's in the entertainment world, try and find someone like Sony, or, you know, somebody like Philips, or, you know, somebody, which sounds crazy, Rosa, but it's actually not. It's all about your approach. The number of big companies I've approached with nothing behind me, no relationships, no contacts, but I talk about what we're doing and they want to come on board is incredible, right? So I think it is a really clever idea to try and find somebody on an advisory board that is linked to the marketplace that your business or idea is in.
Wow, this is excellent. So many tips and pieces of wisdom, Hardeep. What does everyone think of these pieces of wisdom that Hardeep is sharing with us today? You know, you're right. It's about knowing your audience, knowing where they are, and, you know, setting up focus groups and niching down even further. And then you talk about the value of partnerships, collaborations, sponsorships, this whole area of network, knowing your network, not just your support network, okay, but business partnerships and collaborations that you can have. Can you talk to us a little bit about building business partnerships and collaborations? I know you mentioned about the kind of the sponsorship area there, but what other pieces of wisdom do you have on that, building collaborations and partnerships?
So the first thing is your story has got to be crystal clear, right? So what your business is about, the mission, the vision of your business, the mission of your business, the goal of your business, exactly where you are. So before you talk to any partner whatsoever, you make sure you have your thorough understanding of what it is that you are doing as a business, right? And then you have to think about what kind of businesses or partnerships that you can create will benefit from your idea, right? What would they do? So if I would think about Kaleidoscope, for instance, NatWest, they wanted to do something to do with diversity. That was on their agenda. Those were the values that they had, right? So Kaleidoscope fitted very nicely in with that because we were a social company with a disability mindset and we were trying to do something ethical. Perfect fit. So it's a no-brainer, right? So first of all, identify 5 to 10 companies that you feel your values align with and your business could benefit, right? So it's not just them benefiting you. You have to think about why your idea and your business will benefit them. What's in it for them, right?
Exactly. So you got to know what your value is. What is the value that you're offering? Otherwise, why are you in that partnership or relationship? Yeah.
Precisely. And one really good thing to do is read their annual reports. Okay. A lot of these large companies have great annual reports. Read those reports. Look at different things that you've picked up on. And when you're approaching them, you can actually say, by the way, I saw in your annual report last June that you did this initiative. This is how what I'm trying to do fits in with this initiative, right? So have that idea. And then you need to then create a vision for the future. Right? If you partner with me, what can we do together? Right? How can we help to grow this partnership? And what do I want from you? So then the final bit is you do have to be clear. What do you want from that company? And you know, Rosa, I'm going to be very honest with you, right? I struggle with this till today sometimes, right? I mean, we feel very privileged to say that there's virtually no company that we haven't been in touch with if we want to be, right? Our network is that strong. But actually finding the angle and thinking about how you're going to work with companies in a win-win way, that's still a challenge. That's still a challenge for all of us, right? So what I'm saying is don't go far and wide. You only need 1 or 2 people to get on board first. And the minute you've got one person, trust me, the rest follow. Okay?
It builds momentum.
It builds momentum. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would suggest is if you could build partnerships with the government in some way, or local authorities, or other organizations that are trying to do good, right? Whether that's a charity, you know, or a social enterprise, that can only be a benefit to your business as well, because the stronger you show that you have a network of people that are supporting you, the better it is. And that's why I think building a team, I know we haven't spoken about building a team yet, Rosa, but building a team of people that are supporting you, and the team to me should be a minimum of 3 people, minimum, right? The founder, an executor, and somebody that's in sales and marketing. Right. That's what you really need as a team of 3. The minute you've got that, and you've got sort of an advisory board set up, which again is very easy these days, you just build credibility. You continue to build credibility. So summary: having a really good story, making sure you pick a partner very well and paint a picture for the future, and make sure you know how to ask for what you want from that partner.
So that's like, you need to know what your elevator pitch is. I
Absolutely.
love the whole idea of futurizing. You've got to be able to pitch what that future with that potential partner or sponsor is going to be. You actually have to show them the way and say, this is how we can do it. This is what we can achieve together. Here's what the results will look like. And being able to know how to sell or market that vision with that potential partner or collaborator. Okay, I just wanted to share with you, Hardeep. I have Claire who said, thank you so much, Hardeep. You're answering all the questions I wanted to ask.
I'm delighted. Thank you, Claire.
Okay. So let's move on, because I want us to get into funding. There are different routes into funding. There are different pockets of funding. There may be, our audience today, maybe people thinking or wanting to get into entrepreneurialism and start their own business. There may be those who've already started, and then there may be those who are already well on their way. And I know that there's different types of pockets of funding for each of those different stages. Can you please spend a little bit of time talking to us about the different routes for funding for disabled entrepreneurs?
Sure. So and this is just my advice, Rosa, right? So it's based on my journey and what I've done. I think the first thing that any investor wants to see is that you have put some money into a business, right? Now, it's well and good putting in your time and putting in your effort, but you know what? That's expected. That's expected. You know, one of the questions I often ask is, you know, what element of real cash or real money have you put into the business? So I would think, first of all, if you're really serious about starting a business, demonstrate to an investor that you've put some of your own capital into the company, right? Number one. Number two, the friends and family round, I think, is the most critical round, but is also the most soul destroying round. And if I had to be really honest, Rosa, you know, in the last 7 years, my journey of raising money has almost destroyed me. It's been the hardest thing in the world. And the reason for that is that there is no track record, or there's a very little track record of investing in disabled people, right? You say that, yet, you know, the Richard Bransons, the Elon Musks, the Tommy Hilfiger, the IKEA founder, you know, the Cisco founder, so many people that are around us every day have been the founders of those companies have products that we use every single day, and yet they've been disabled, but still there isn't a track record, right? So family and friends is a critical round. And you have to be ready to go to those people with your idea in a very confident way and ask them if they will either lend you money, donate money, or actually invest into your business, right? And this is, I hate doing this. I've done it lots of times. I hate doing it, but it's critical, you know, and this is where the motivation piece comes in, Rosa, because when you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, it gives you the strength to continue to go on, right? And asking for money and raising money is the single biggest thing that's going to make your business fail, because if you don't succeed in raising money, it won't work, right? Unless you completely bootstrap it and you can build it organically. But if you build it in the way you want to build it, it won't work. Now, there could be small things that happen that give you that strength. So you just said, Claire, I can just see here, thank you for answering questions. That for me is a very motivating and inspiring comment, Rosa, right? Things like that can sometimes give me the strength to continue to go on and do what I do, right? So it can be the small things, but ask your friends, ask your family, okay, and try and raise some money through the friends and family round. And the critical thing to do with those two funding rounds is to build a proof of concept, right? It's really important to try and get something that people can see, people can touch, people can feel, right? It's not you just talking about, this is my idea. It's like, here's the item of clothing that I've designed. Let me feel the fabric. Let me see how it connects at the front. You know, it's about seeing a prototype of something. If it's an app, how is it actually going to work? I was in an investor pitch yesterday, and I've heard this guy talk about something through using a presentation. And I've also heard him do a demo, or seen him do a demo. And the demo is infinitely more powerful, Rosa, because the demo actually enables you to touch and feel something and see how it's really going to work. So use your own money and your family and friends, or friends and family round, to build something that gets you to the point that you've got a product that's sort of on a runway, and then you're raising money to actually finish that product and get it off the runway, right? So first step, your own money. Second step, friends and family. Third step is to see if there are grants that are available. Now, Innovate UK, fantastic organization, right? You know, we do a lot of work with Innovate UK, government organization, and they're always looking, and they've always got calls out for different ideas that are in different areas. Don't be afraid to consult with grant experts, right? This is a lesson that I learned, is that, you know, if I've consulted with a grant expert and probably paid a little bit of money in the early stages, then it would be much faster to raise money through generating grants, right? But having somebody that can give you a grant is great. And you can still be a private company and get grants. You don't have to worry about being a charity or a social enterprise, right? Especially in the disability space. If you are a person with a disability and you're trying to raise money, look at grants, right? And then you can think about crowdfunding. You know, I've personally, the only crowdfunding that I've ever done is what I call under the table invitation only crowdfunding. So, you know, if you've got a good network of people, start setting up, you know, regular meetings, invite people that might want to put some money into those meetings. Obviously, you have to put the right sort of warnings at the very beginning about, you know, how you influence them to invest and so on and so forth. But that's a really good way, using your network. Okay, and this is something, Rosa, you do amazingly well, right? Is using LinkedIn to sort of get the message out there. Get the message out there that you've got an idea that you're looking to fund, you'd like to welcome or invite people to learn more about what it is you're trying to do. I get these daily. I get so many people approaching me through messaging. So crowdfunding is a good thing, but I think trying to be creative about how you crowdfund would be a great thing to do. And then, of course, there is the investment piece, right? Speaking to investors, I would say there are more companies now that are open to investing in diverse founders, you know, diverse, you know, being all the streams of diversity that there's ever been before, right? And I can say that quite confidently because I've watched all the VCs and all the PE firms. I mean, they are still trying to pick the disabled entrepreneur ideas that are in the tech space or that, you know, are very, very scalable. Most of them are still doing that. But ESG, you know, environment, social and governance investing, ethical investing, social impact investing, these are all areas that are becoming very, very popular, Rosa. Okay, so if you can find a way for your idea to tick some of those boxes, that will help to improve your chances of actually, you know, achieving investment. And, you know, you've got the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right? They have 17 goals. Try and fit your idea into those sustainable development goals to show that you're doing something ethical, sustainable, social, in addition to making money. That will open the door to investors. But just be very cautious when it comes to the investors that you talk to, right? And one of the things that I'm always happy to do, Rosa, is if somebody wanted a friendly chat, you know, about, you know, they've got this deal on the table, should they go ahead, should they not go ahead? I'm always happy to put in a little bit of time and give people some advice on that, because it's really easy to be taken advantage of if you don't
just
know
on that, Hardeep, sorry for interrupting, just on that. So if people do, because obviously we have lots of things coming through in the chat, if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that? Are you happy to give your email address out, or?
Sure. I'm very happy to give my email address out. I have no problem with that at all. I have good people around me supporting me. Our website is, you know, kaleidoscope.group. you can get in touch through us that way. So yes, absolutely, Rosa. But I think it's really important on the investment side to get advice before you sign anything. And also the critical thing on the investment side is, it is the valuation of your company and how much of a shareholding you have to give away, when you do raise money. So that's something that you have to be very, very mindful of. You don't want to give away too much too quickly, which is why I was saying, if you can do a friends and family round first and put your own money in, then actually that benefits you in the longer term, because you will increase the value of your business before you get investment in. And finally, Rosa, I would say loans. You can get longer term loans for your business. There's a lot of companies out there now that are offering loans for startups, right? Again, I haven't done that myself. I do know people that have done that. Check the small print, but I think there are some really good opportunities to raise money now, many more than they've ever been for a long time, I would say.
Brilliant. And I also just want to make mention, there's other sorts of grants and schemes available. Some people may or may not know this, but we do have the Access to Work. It's a government grant scheme that supports disabled people in work, but also those who want to get into self-employment, right? So they can support you with specialist software, adaptations that you may need in your office, a support worker, a driver, so you can get up to 100% of those costs covered. So there's lots of different types of grants and schemes and funding that's available out there. But one of the ones that a lot of people don't know about is that Access to Work, that government grant scheme that's available. I'm just conscious of time. I would love to have another hour of your time, Hardeep, and ask you lots more questions. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to open our Q&A now to anybody who wants to specifically ask some questions to Hardeep. And Hardeep, there has been a few of our candidates that have sent in some questions. I know that you'd asked this before. And so I just wanted to ask you here, here's a couple of questions. How might I protect my business from a legal disaster? And how should I look into insurance? Can you give us some tips on this area, please?
Sure. So I think, again, brilliant resources. Companies House general advice line is fantastic if you want to set up a limited company. But obviously, you have to think first about whether you want a charity, whether you want a community interest company, which is social enterprise really, or a private company. So those are the first three decisions you need to make. Limited company tends to be the most safest in terms of if something went wrong, your liability is limited to what is in that company and not personally. And that's the only challenge of being a sole trader, really. But that's something to think about. I think business insurance, company director insurance, and somebody I'd like to recommend here is the Federation of Small Businesses, the FSB. I think they are fantastic for advice for small businesses. It was the best £140 I ever spent, when I first started my company, because you get insurances with them already. You get a free legal advice line that you could use, right? So those types of organizations out there can give you some very good ideas about how to get what insurances you need. And, if you're going to other people's premises, public liability insurance, or someone's coming to your premises, things like that. So that's really what I would recommend there, Rosa. There are some fantastic general advice lines that are linked to Companies House and the FSB, where you can just get advice on how to structure in the most simplest way. I'm not saying anything against accountants. Accountants do great jobs when it comes to setting up companies, but it actually costs £12 to set up a company at Companies House, right? Some of these things can be very simple to do. You've gone on mute, Rose. I can't hear you for some reason.
Thank you. Because we started a little bit later today, I'm happy for this to go on another 4 or 5 minutes. Here's an interesting question. How important is brand, creating an identity for your business?
Yeah. Critical. That's a great question. It's critical to create a good brand, critical. And I think that you have to, in order to do that, you have to know what your business stands for, right? It's critical to know what your business stands for. We spoke about mission, vision, and goals, and then making sure that your brand identity stands for those goals, and aligning yourself to partnerships out there as well that will endorse that brand that you're trying to build. And for me, having a story behind your logo is really important as well. So, you know the Kaleidoscope logo with the 4 circles, right?
Yes.
The reason I picked Kaleidoscope as a name is because when you look at a kaleidoscope or you look through it, there's lots of tiny pieces that are different colors and different shapes that by themselves, they don't amount to anything. If you saw it, you wouldn't do anything. But if you put them together in a kaleidoscope, you get a really beautiful image, right? And that's what I want Kaleidoscope to be. A company that brings together people from all different backgrounds, all races, all disabilities. And when you pull them together, you create something beautiful, right? That's a story. That's a brand. It aligns to us saying that we want people, there is no difference in different, right? People with disabilities are not different. There's no difference in that, right? So it's creating a world where there's equal opportunities for everybody. So it's having some names, it's having some values, it's having a story behind your logo, but it's critical. But you've got to let people know what you stand for. My marketing director is forever saying to me, Hardeep, what are our goals now? What are our targets? What are we moving towards? So you have to have that bigger picture.
And I also just want to come back to what you said at the very, very start. It's okay to share your story of disability. In fact, it's a very powerful one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. I call this the narrative. So when we're speaking, it's really bring your narrative into your story. Just like I've spoken about Ishan. You've seen, I would literally replicate what I've done with Ishan, you do about your story. Every single person is unique with a disability, every single one. You've got resilience, you've got willpower, you've got determination, you've got soft skills that are inherent in you because you've had to overcome a disability, right? A lot of people that are entrepreneurs, they don't have those skills or they don't have them in abundance. And that's not to say that you haven't been through a difficult journey in your challenges, but most of us have come to terms with what we've got. We've come to terms with a new type of life, but we've got those skills that we can leverage. So weaving that story into your idea, I think is absolutely critical.
We do have a question that's come in. So the things that really concern me about setting up a business is that my disabilities comes with fluctuations, variable energy levels. This is a really good one, and abilities. Do you have any advice on managing this? For instance, if I am setting up things and have a flare that's resulted in me being unable to speak or to move now, how would I deal with this? So this is really, I suppose, is how you are managing your challenges, your condition as an entrepreneur. For this particular individual or lady, it's really about those variable energy levels. What sort of advice do you have on that? Because I know you spoke earlier very candidly, and I want to thank you for this, Hardeep, about your own mental health challenges as you were working through your own business, etc. So what's your tips, or how do you answer that?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is make sure that you understand yourself and your capabilities very, very clearly. Okay, and I think you do know that, right? So whatever your capabilities are, make sure you understand those. Number 2, divide your day or your time into when you know you are going to be able to work, right? So if you know your best times are 3 to 6, then block out that time in your diary. It's going to be 3 to 6, right? That's what you're going to do. And be as efficient as you can during those times in building your business. Now, the one most basic thing we haven't spoken about today is building a business plan, right? So creating a business plan will give you the structure that you need to be able to build your business. So we can happily share ours, or if you put anyone in touch with us, Rosa, we're delighted to walk them through that process to help them. But I think what's really important is how you communicate what your limitations are to those other people that are around you. Because the biggest risk you face is that if people don't know what your challenges are, they're not going to be able to support you, or they will misinterpret what it is that you're trying to do or get across. We had a guy, Rosa, very quickly, he had short-term memory loss, but he was too embarrassed to tell us. So every time we finished a meeting and he was meant to do his actions, he wouldn't do them. And in 3 or 4 weeks, we're thinking, what's going on here? He hasn't done anything. And then he admitted that he's got short-term memory loss, you know, so it's things like that. So it's communicating those things honestly. And not everyone, Rosa, is going to be patient with things like that, you know, but that's an example of somebody that could approach Kaleidoscope, because we would understand things like that.
Yeah. So, you know, essentially it's okay to share, you know, what accommodations that you need, what your condition is and the challenges that it might bring up, but also how you're going to overcome them. But sometimes we do need to reach out there and ask for that support, you know, through accommodations from others, just being patient or mindful, right through to reaching out to access to work, etc. Okay, last question. What's left on your bucket list, Hardeep?
Oh my God, that's a really what's left on my bucket list? Probably jumping out of an aeroplane. I'm a thrill seeker, I have to say. That's one thing I haven't really done. I think I would quite love to jump out of an aeroplane. Okay. That's a personal thing. By the way, Rosa, I just think I saw a question here. Is it from Tammy? It says, I have autism. Even as a career coach, I find the idea of networking painful. I actually experienced physical pain in traditional networking environments. Have you worked with any people with autism? And if so, how have you coached them to cope with networking? So my short answer is, Tammy, if you're happy to speak to me, I would love to speak to you more about that, because that's a very, very long answer to that question. The answer is absolutely. We've worked with a lot of people that have got autism, and there's still ways that you can network, but you just have to make adaptations, you know, but a lot of it is sort of understanding yourself and what you can do and what your capabilities are. And networking is all about knowing your angle. What is it that you want to achieve, right, Rosa, from that particular environment?
Yeah. And Hardeep, there is face-to-face networking. There is networking online. You don't have to physically go out there if you're uncomfortable, and especially, you know, we're still in the middle of COVID. There's lots and lots of ways you can link in and connect with people. Even like LinkedIn, it's a huge database where you can go and connect with people. Again, it comes down to knowing your pitch. What's your agenda? How are you wanting to collaborate with that particular individual, etc. So thank you for that, Hardeep. I also just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, Hardeep has offered, if you've got any questions and you want to reach out, obviously you can go directly to the Kaleidoscope website where there's a contact us form. Also, if you're wanting more information, advice, tips and tools on setting up your own business, or you're already established, but you're wanting to find out more opportunities for grants or funding, please go to our Hive, which is our 24/7 site. That's accessible for everyone. And we've got some fabulous pieces of content, including we've got some information on the Kaleidoscope group and what they offer. We've also got Hedge, which since 2014 has supported over 700 businesses, provides different programs and courses designed for want-to-be entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. We've also got some information on a fabulous group called Untapped, which is a virtual hub for entrepreneurial females. And of course, we've got the Growth Hub, which is basically local public private sector partnerships led by the local enterprise partnerships. So it's joined up local business, both private and public, that comes together that can help support you with your business within your local area. So please feel free to go on to the Hive, because it's stacked full of lots of really, really interesting and great pieces of information on how to start your business, how to seek grants and funding. Hardeep, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the session today. It was stacked full of incredible pieces of wisdom and lots of tips. I certainly have learned a lot today, and I know that our audience has. And I just wanted to thank you very much for your time and sharing your story, because it was very, very, very powerful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rosa. I was very grateful for the opportunity. And of course, Jane, thank you very much for suggesting that I did this as well. It's been a real pleasure.
Fantastic. So that finishes our Meet the Entrepreneur and Businessman session today. Please feel free to register for other events. We've got lots of events coming up. We've got Evenbreak Explores Neurodiversity, How to Succeed at Interview, and lots of other Meet the Employer events. But you'll have to go on to the About Us section of the Evenbreak website and register for those events. Thank you all very much for joining us, and see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.